So last week, we revealed the center's vision and mission statements that had been co-created by the leadership of the center in a really beautiful collaborative effort. We talked about the importance of having a vision, or as our founder Ernest Holmes talks about it, having a mental equivalent of how we would like our life to look, whether it's our personal life or whether it's the life of the center or the life of an organization. Now, of course, with a vision, one of the things we need to understand is with a vision, we're not talking about a hard and fast rule or a set in stone idea. With vision, we're not even talking about goal or intention. A vision is more of an ideal, something to aspire to, something to grow into, something that acts as a beacon for us. So if you weren't here last week, and you're wondering about those vision statements, the vision and the mission statements, I'm going to share them with you because I just love them. So the vision statement for the Calvary Center for Spiritual Living is, the Calvary Center for Spiritual Living is a beacon of spiritual illumination that inspires individuals to reveal their wholeness, co-creating a world that works for everyone. Yeah? Yeah. And then the mission statement, like how we're going to do that. So the vision is what we want to do, and the mission statement is how we're going to do that. The mission statement is the Calvary Center for Spiritual Living makes accessible a way of living and thinking that reveals one's spiritual magnificence and personal power. We co-create an inclusive community that fosters an expansion of consciousness. Again, breathe that in. Because I don't know about you all, but that gives me God bumps every time I read it. I love thinking of us as a beacon of spiritual illumination that inspires other people. Yes? 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 That visual image of a beacon, like of a lighthouse, or, because I'm a bit of a performer, in case you never knew that, like the Klieg lights that they have before the premiere of a movie, that's kind of how I think about it. It shows up in my meditations all the time, and now I know why. Because when we stand in our truth, and we live our lives from a conscious and awakened way, we are acting as a beacon. In other words, when we are standing in our truth, we're living in a conscious and awakened way, what we're doing is shining a light of illumination for others to be able to see their light. I mean, we talked last week about what that world might look like, where everyone knew their wholeness, where everyone knew their spiritual perfection, where everyone was expressing their unique talents and they were sharing their gifts. As the great John Lennon put it, imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Talk about a vision statement. And think about this every time we sing that song, every time anyone sings that song, it's implanting it ever more firmly into the collective consciousness. Right? Right. So that brings me to today's topic. Today's topic is called a global vision. I told you last week that we were going to be discussing our center, our organization's vision and mission statements today. And you may not know this, but we actually belong to a much larger and international organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. What a concept. In one incarnation or another, Centers for Spiritual Living has been in existence since the 1930s. And its primary purpose for many, many years was to support centers like this one in teaching people how to use the power of their minds to create the lives that they would like to live. So for years, the emphasis has been on internal and personal work, focusing on our own individual connection with the universe. Because the belief is, and I believe it absolutely, is that as we become more conscious, as we become more awake ourselves, we contribute to the consciousness and the awakeness of humankind. So I am a firm believer in doing our internal work first, because that's how true transformation is going to take place. As within, so without. And times have changed since the 1930s, when our organization began. Times have changed since the 1980s, when I came into this teaching. And times have changed since 40 years ago, when you came into this teaching. Am I right? Is Ed here? Oh, if he's not, okay, anyway. And let me tell you why it's different, folks. With the advent of technology, the world has become a much smaller place. Instead of it taking days or weeks for information to be known, it is now instantaneous. So what that means is our unified collective consciousness has become more unified. Does that make sense? Our connection with one another has gone beyond just being spiritually connected. And don't get me wrong, spiritually connected is powerful, but we are also tangibly connected to one another via the internet, via cell phones, via technology. So what that means is that we can and must begin making a tangible difference in the world instead of just a spiritual one. I don't want to say instead of just a spiritual one, but spiritual, but also tangibly. Is this making sense? It's making perfect sense to me. Okay. It is incumbent upon us to truly be someone who is creating a world that works for everyone. Which brings me then to the official purpose and vision and mission statements for Centers for Spiritual Living, because it speaks to this in very broad terms. So Centers for Spiritual Living, our purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Our vision is a world that works for everyone. And our mission is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. Now there's a lot of gold in these statements. They're brief, they're simple, but there is, oh man, are they meaty, right? Just think, an organization whose purpose for being is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Just think about that. Think about an organization that, if we lived in a world where everyone knew who they were as spiritually magnificent. Put your hand right here and say, I am spiritually magnificent. Do you believe it? You know what? We believe it. I believe it. We are spiritually magnificent. We are waking up to that. And because we know who we are, then that means that we can know who everybody else is. There wouldn't be any, if we lived in this world, there wouldn't be any need to try to convince anybody else of our way of believing or seeing. Everyone would simply just accept everyone else as God and expression. And that would be the essence of a world that works for everyone. So I did a talk a few months ago, specifically around the topic of a world that works for everyone. And I said that it was important to understand that that doesn't mean a world that works the same for everyone. In other words, what works for us in North America might not be what works for someone in Africa or in South America or in the Middle East. You may remember this picture. I showed it when I talked about this before, and it illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. So it shows a group of African boys, and they're saying here, the children in America are forced to spend over 8 hours sitting in classrooms. then they're drugged when they move too much or make too much noise, and their primary source of entertainment is the television. And the other one says, that's horrible. We should take up donations for them. So a world that works for everyone is not what we say it is. A world that works for everyone is a world where everyone, everywhere, lives safely, regardless of their religious or their cultural backgrounds or their gender. A world that works for everyone means that everyone has enough to eat and clean water to drink. A world that works for everyone means that people can practice their beliefs without fear of reprisal or of punishment. A world that works for everyone means that people are giving what they came here to give in the way that they came here to give it. So that brings me to another portion of that mission of Centers for Spiritual Living, to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. Again, this doesn't mean that we're setting out to convert everyone to our way of thinking. All it means is that we want to teach people how to think, not what to think. You understand what I'm saying? I say that to my students all the time. I will never tell you what to think. I will only teach you how to think, how to use your mind to be creative. Because the spiritual tool of knowing how to use our thoughts to create truly can transform lives, both personally and globally. Which then contributes to a world that works for everyone, because everyone would be awakening to their spiritual potential. See how that all works? You didn't think I'd get there, did you? So about 4 years ago, our parent organization went through a transformation of its own. Without going into a lot of detail, because it's kind of a sordid story, I'll tell you about it afterwards if you'd like. The two factions of the organization merged together into one and created this larger, more global organization. And with that came a larger, more global vision. In fact, it's called the Global Vision. And while it's not the official vision of the organization, it's definitely one of its guiding documents, one of its guiding principles. Because it's far-reaching and inspiring and represents the ideal of a world that works for everyone. So here it is in a really fun word art formula. The global vision, a world that works for everyone, where all life is honored as expressions of the divine. Where all life is honored as expressions of the divine. Where people live according to spiritual truth. Where humanity awakens to spiritual magnificence. Where humanity rediscovers personal creative power. Where we live as one global family. Where kinship with all life prospers. Where unity and connection are emphasized. Where forgiveness is the norm. Where spiritual guidance is valued. Where we are called to conscious social action. Where people have enough food, homes, and a sense of belonging. Where there is peace, harmony, and justice for all. Where resources are valued, cared for, and shared. Where communities are meaningfully involved in service to the world. Where there is a renewed emphasis on beauty, nature, creativity, art, and aesthetics. Just let that one settle. There's so much to it. It's a big, big vision. It's a global vision. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, you know what, it sounds great, but how? How can I help to make this vision a reality? Well, the first thing you need to do is to keep doing what you're doing. Keep being committed to your own spiritual practice and your own consciousness expansion. Because the more conscious and awake we become, the clearer the path becomes. You understand what I'm saying by that? The more clear we come, the path becomes clearer. Because if we're going through life with our blinders on like this is all we can see. But as we continue to do the work that we are doing and our blinders begin to open up, we can see more. There is more clarity. We can see more of the path, more of where it is that we're going. So when we expand what we see more. Then, in addition to already doing what you're doing, start paying attention to the things that present themselves to you as opportunities to serve, as opportunities to make a difference. For you, maybe it's not selling your house and going to be a teacher in some third world country. That doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't appeal to me. For you, maybe it's giving your talent right here in town. You know that old adage, you remember this, think globally, act locally. That's what we're talking about. Now, if selling your house and going to teach in a third world country calls you, then by all means do it. But that isn't the only way to create a world that works for everyone. Also, continuing to do what you're doing to expand your consciousness, what's happening, again, is that you're adding that to the collective consciousness of the world. I want you to think about this for a minute. What if your positive, affirmative, accepting, loving, and expansive thought, that one right there, what if that thought caused the tipping point? What if your vibration was the one that was needed to take us from a world of chaos to a world that works for everyone? What if it's you? What if it's you? The beauty of the universe is we don't need to know how things are going to happen. We just need to have faith that they do happen. We need to know that our thoughts are things. And then we need to trust that the orderliness and the intelligence of the universe will bring it into being. For instance, there's someone whose birthday is being celebrated, certainly in the States, being celebrated this weekend. This person had a vision that took hold and grew long after his death by assassination. Dr. Martin Luther King, in his famous speech, proclaimed, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Now, he didn't say it has to be this way. He didn't say it has to be that way. He held up a vision high for people to see. And providence, with a capital P, the divine, the universe, provided the way. In other words, his dream, his vision provided a beacon of spiritual illumination for something whose time had come. And 50 years later, the United States elected a black man as president. And last year, the Canadian Prime Minister appointed a cabinet that was more diverse than ever before. So are we completely fulfilling Dr. King's vision, his dream, right here in North America? Well, here in Canada, we're doing a better job, but we're not there yet, right? And that's okay, because in the big scheme of things, 50 years since Dr. King's speech is not a very long time. We've come a long way. And there is still more to do. So what I encourage all of us to do is to keep doing what we're doing. Keep expanding consciousness. Keep being in service where you are called. Keep doing what you are doing and giving the gift that you came here to give, because that way you are bringing the global vision into reality. Next week, we're going to continue with our conversation on vision by looking at creating our own personal mission and vision statements. So stay tuned for that. Come prepared to do a little work, okay? It'll be fun, I promise. I promise. Thank you for being here, and so it is.